Hi, my name is Rhonda Greenha. I'm the founder and president of My Time to Launch. I created My Time to Launch because, as a parent of a young adult on the autism spectrum and a board certified behavior analyst, I really wanted to provide really great therapeutic services and information to families who are going on the same journey that my family went on. So, I have designed this series to introduce parents of newly diagnosed children to things that I think I wish I had known when I was dealing with my child's diagnosis. My daughter Alana was diagnosed at around age 2 or 3, but there were so many things that if I had known earlier on when she was first diagnosed, I would have done differently. And so I'm designing this series, and it's a 10-part series for parents of newly diagnosed children to give you an advantage that I did not have. So let's get started. Chapter 1, The Journey Begins. From diagnosis to acceptance, embracing the autism spectrum, and finding your family's unique path. When your child is first diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum or with any cognitive-based disability such as Down syndrome or ADHD, the world can feel as though it has shifted. Your emotions are complex. I remember when Alana was first diagnosed, I went through such a range of emotions: grief, anger, sadness. And I think that a lot of that had to do with my preconceived notions about what childhood should look like and what her developmental trajectory should look like. And what I've learned throughout these years is that, normal is a setting on a dryer. There is no normal developmental trajectory. And children on the autism spectrum have a very different developmental pathway than neurotypical children. But that does not mean that they can't learn and grow, and they do. And they learn and grow so much and in so many amazing ways. So your emotions as you get your child's diagnosis are complex and often very overwhelming, and can range from confusion and worry to even relief and hope. Sometimes just finding out what's going on is relieving. The beginning of this journey is unlike any other, and it's natural to feel uncertain and even fearful. But because I am a mom and because I am also a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, I can tell you that this path is also filled with profound beauty, growth, and discovery. My hope for this chapter in this video series is to guide you through these early steps with empathy, to inspire a perspective of radical acceptance, which we'll talk more about, and to help you realize that this journey is not about changing your child, but about growing together as a family. When my daughter Alana was first diagnosed, I was filled with dread, as I said, and scared about what was going to come next, worried about her future, and frightened about how the world would receive her. And I think that was the thing that was the scariest part of that. Alana was about 2.5 when we took her to our local school to get testing. I remember sobbing when I got the news, a 31 IQ score. I was devastated and afraid for her future. At this point in our lives, Alana was hardly speaking. As a baby, she was very precocious and developed language very early. She spoke at 5 months, and by a year, she could count to 50, and she knew all of her alphabet and what sounds they make. I remember when she was only 13 months old, she was standing in my bedroom. She could hardly stand up. She was holding on to the bookcase, trying to sound out the word almanac, and that really blew my mind. And she had only been walking for just a few weeks. Things seemed to be going great. A few months after trying to read the word almanac, our world started to change. Alana started to line up her toys. She started stimming, which we'll talk about later in the series, rocking back and forth and staring at her fingers. She would freak out over minor things and run screaming to me about something like hearing a door shut. And most alarmingly, she started losing words. That was terrifying. Words that she said a lot, such as kitty or her favorite snacks. I remember her trying to say the word kitty, and instead of the word kitty, she just made the sound of the word. With her favorite snacks, once I was trying to help her and offered her a potato chip, which was her favorite, and tried to get her to say the word chip. And I could see her trying so hard. And you could almost see the wheels turning as she was struggling to generate the word chip. But the only thing she could get out was the word yellows. I gave her the chip, but I was devastated. What I did not yet appreciate was the creativity, the tenacity, and the problem solving inherent within my child. She couldn't say chip, but she tried and tried and tried. She was tenacious, and she was a hard worker. She was creative. She found a way to communicate with me and let me know what she wanted. And she problem solved. She couldn't say chip, but she came up with yellows, and that got her point across. 20 years later, I can say without equivocation that I have seen so many examples of these qualities and so many other exceptional qualities of this amazing population of people that I have been honored to work with. Section 1, Shifting Perspectives, Embracing Neurodiversity, the Power of Radical Acceptance. Now I want to talk about the importance of something that really needs to be foundational in your interactions with your child. And it's about shifting our perspectives, embracing neurodiversity, and the power of radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is not about resignation or giving up. Rather, it is about embracing the beauty and diversity in every mind. Autism is a part of the human experience, one that brings unique ways of thinking, feeling, and interacting with the world. This perspective, seeing autism not as something to cure or fix, but as a different, equally valuable way of being, can be transformative for families. I know it was for me and for my family. The medical model has had such a tremendous impact on families. The traditional medical model of autism often frames it in terms of deficits or as a disorder, which can make parents and people on the spectrum feel as though they need to be fixed or brought closer to a typical standard. While there may be areas where support is beneficial, this deficit-focused model places undue pressure on families and on people on the spectrum. It's a perspective that subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, implies that your child's differences are flaws. But in my experience, this mindset can be incredibly corrosive. I know it was with me. When Alana was first diagnosed, we had a lot of professionals, educators, people in the healthcare field, focusing in on what Alana was not capable of doing. And that is really how the medical model works. Insurance companies, if you want to provide treatment, you have to come up with a list of things to remediate or fix within your child. That sets up the entire system as a premise for what is going wrong and what is not working with your child. So rather than looking at things that are positive in your child's life and seeing how they've grown, they look at the areas that they haven't done well. And I understand that that's important to do on some level, but when that is the foundational approach, it can be incredibly corrosive. Hearing all of this negative information from every person you talk to about your child that's in a professional capacity really is overwhelming and really starts to erode that relationship that the parent has with the child. In my experience, this mindset is incredibly corrosive. It can obscure the incredible individuality and strength of your child and divert attention from what truly matters, helping them thrive as their authentic selves. When I was working with Alana after her diagnosis, I was immersed in the medical model of disability. Having been in this field, having a scientific background, and not really having any information about other perspectives. Back then, neurodiversity was not even a word, I don't think. I turned to the internet. For me, having a peer-reviewed model was preeminent. It was the most important thing. And I knew enough to know that there was a lot of pseudoscientific approaches that were extremely expensive. Things like swimming with the dolphins or hyperbaric oxygen chambers, or things that were dangerous like chelation, where they actually give children medication to leach what they say are toxins out of the body. And children have I know personally that there was a child in Pennsylvania that died as a result of chelation. So this is, these approaches, were based on the medical model of deficits and that something was drastically wrong with your child versus the neurodiversity perspective. So a lot of pseudoscientific approaches that were extremely expensive, no validated evidence that they worked, and frankly, just a lot of bunk. So being the scientifically minded person I sought to find the most scientifically validated approach. And, after a lot of looking, that really led me to applied behavior analysis, or ABA. ABA has a very long body of research support and was one of the only methodologies that had been demonstrated to work, teaching children to speak. And ABA companies promised to make my child indistinguishable from their typically developing peers. That was the big mantra. The goal was to make the child indistinguishable from their typically developing peers. And so for the first time since Alana's diagnosis, I had hope. My only exposure to autism back then was when Alana was being diagnosed, was the movie Rain Man. And it terrified me to think of my baby being so dysfunctional that returning to an institution the way that character had to, and that was the only home that would work for her, was heartbreaking and terrifying to think of. And that's how the movie Rain Man ends. So with Alana struggling to communicate and having increasingly different behaviors than my older child, I poured everything I had into studying ABA. I eventually went back to graduate school and ultimately became a board-certified behavior analyst. An expert in the methodology that I thought would fix my child. Because to me, based on all the evidence and my experience and my educational background, my child was broken and needed to be fixed. All of the pediatricians, neuropsychiatrists, speech therapists, and speech educators highlighted all of my daughter's deficiencies, and now I had the skills to help fix her. What I didn't realize at the time is that my daughter was not broken and she did not need to be fixed. The medical and educational communities had convinced me that she was broken. But I was about to immerse myself into some very different perspectives that would rock my world.